Hey everyone, welcome back to Make the Music. We're now in part 8 of our series of creating a song from scratch. We went over vocals in the last lesson. Today I'm going to go over a much needed phase, a phase of production that a lot of people skip over, or they kind of combine it into other phases and don't give it the attention it needs, and that is editing. Preparing your track for that final mixing stage. You don't want to be editing your tracks, fixing timing problems, noises, tuning. When you're in the mix mode and you're trying to figure out how to get your track to sonically come out as best as possible, you don't want to have to focus on these other aspects. So in this video, I'm going to go over what I do when it comes to editing, especially for this track, some of the tips that I follow, and especially vocals. What really takes your track from sounding okay or amateur, but sounding decent to that pro mix is really editing your vocals and editing them well. Not just quantizing every single line and word, because that's not going to get you a natural performance, but editing your vocals so that they're in line, they're in tune in the way that it fits the track, and they sound professional up front and everything is gain staged properly. So that's what I'm going to go through here. If you're following along with the challenge, let me know how your song's coming along. I'd like to hear about that. Anyways, let me go through this track here. When it came to drums, this was all programmed, so I didn't have any really editing to do. What I actually did was just add an additional clap sample here at the end because I felt like it needed more beef, some more beef in the track. Like I said, when I get to that mixing stage, I don't want to have to focus on production, really. I just want to mix the song, maximize it sonically. So that's what I did there with drums. Nothing really to do there. With bass, all I did is before I go to the mixing phase, I rendered down my amp track. So now the bass is what that amp track was. I just bounced it down to a stem here. It sounds like this. Okay, that's pretty self-explanatory. What I also like to do in the editing phase is fix noises or weird things. Like on this acoustic guitar, for example, I forgot to edit it and fade it out, so it sounded like this at the beginning of the track. So there's a whole bunch of noise going on. That doesn't need to be there. That doesn't need to be in the track. So I make sure to edit that out. If there's any timing problems, I made sure to fix those as well. I'm going through just kind of track by track. Electric guitars were fine. There was nothing I needed to do there. Pianos, there was a couple timing issues that I fixed in terms of me tracking the MIDI. I bounced those pianos down. I bounced all the strings down. What I also did here is there was a lead guitar or lead synth pad. It sounded like this. Actually, it was this pad here. What I'd actually done is played the MIDI slightly at a time. So what I had to do is go into the MIDI, make sure that was in time, especially since it's a sequencer pad. It's a pad that relies on timing. So I had to go in and fix that. Not something I really noticed all too much in the tracking phase, but as I went track by track, I was able to figure out, okay, that timing needs to be fixed. Another thing here, if you want to find problems with your tracks, you can find them. And the easy way to do that is to solo them and turn up the volume really loud until you fix every little imperfection. That's not what we're trying to do here. You can find a problem if you go looking for it. What you want to do is play the tracks in context and just see what sticks out. Go, that doesn't sound right. That doesn't sound like something I would hear on a pro mix. Imagine you're listening to a pro mix on your favorite streaming service, CD, in your car, whatever, and go, if I heard that, I would think that sounds really out of place. Those are the things you want to fix. Those are the things you want to resolve. So I make sure to play everything in context. Because like I said, if you solo every track and look for things, you'll find things, especially if they're being mic'd up. But really what matters is context. Now, when it came to vocals, this is the most important part of the editing phase. I have a very deliberate editing process when it comes to vocals. The first thing I do is I gain stage my vocals properly. You don't have to do it this way, but CLA does it this way. And I feel like CLA knows what he's doing when it comes to vocals. So I normalize, I'm not done editing all the vocals yet. What I do is I normalize all the vocals to 0 dB peak. So what you do in Reaper is you go to item processing, normalize items, peak 0 dB. That brings up the levels. They're going to hit compressors properly. They're just going to have enough signal going into your DAW there. So I record conservatively, and then you can always bring up the tracks later. Then what I do is I go through and I edit out just if there's any pops, noises, clicks, breaths I don't like. So for example, here I went back and forth, but I ended up not liking the breath sound that I had going here in this vocal. So listen up here real quick as I play this.
Riding out.
I thought maybe that could be cool, but I decided to edit it out and it sounds cleaner.
Riding out. I got a fire in my soul.
And also what I did is I edited out sections in between vocals where you can just like hear headphone bleed. Maybe that's a cool vibe for your track. Like I said, this is very track specific. For a professional sounding track, a modern track that I'm going for, I definitely want to edit out those sounds. Also, when I hit the keyboard every time to stop recording, that makes it into the recording. And I have to edit the trails and the tails of all my vocals to make sure I'm not getting random keyboard sounds in my mix, because sometimes I'm like, that's a weird pop or click sound. What is that? Well, it turns out when you have a bunch of vocals stacked like I do here, that's just a bunch of times of you hitting stop on the keyboard. So make sure to look for those things as well. When I go through the track too, tuning is a big part of this as well. And I have a video on how to tune vocals like a pro. I follow this step when tuning the vocals for this song. Basically, I go through and with Reatune in Reaper, I find spots where I want to change what note I sung, or I want to make it more clear what the melody's supposed to be. And I draw those in, and then I use Metatune to kind of cap off the rest of the tuning. And I do it a little more relaxed. So I'm not going so extreme with the tuning here, because Reatune is making the deliberate adjustments. And I go through all the vocals. If vocals are stacked, then I can just do it once and copy it to them. But I do that with all the vocals, make sure everything's in tune, everything is sounding right. So like, for example, when these vocals are stacked, if there's slight tuning differences, it's not going to sound right. It's going to sound dissonant, especially if things are off by a half step. So with the vocal stack here.
Oh, you can't stop me, I'm gonna lose control.
So I make sure everything is in tune. When it comes to changing timing and editing, you can see I've done some work here in this verse part. What you want to do is pick one vocal that is your main vocal for what you're going to match the timing to. So for me, it was the lead vocal. I liked the timing of it. I adjusted it slightly, or maybe not that much. And then I go through to all the backups and I change it to match that one. Because if you're trying to change it to all match each other, you're not going to get it right. Pick one vocal where you like how it sounds and then match all the others to it timing wise. And so that's what I did here. I move notes, I move things back. When it's doubles and triples and things like that, it really doesn't matter if you cut off words, cut off lines. It's not going to make as big of a difference. If you have weird punch-ins on your main vocal, then that's going to be a bit of a problem. It's not going to sound great. And if you can't get around that, you might just have to re-sing it at the end of the day. But when it comes to these backgrounds, I have no problem cutting words off, getting rid of tails, moving things around. Soloed, it might sound weird. Like here's this double, which is all cut up.
Oh, you can't stop me, I'm gonna lose control.
Right, it doesn't really sound right on its own, but in context.
Oh, you can't stop me, I'm gonna lose control.
So it doesn't really matter, and especially if I bring in the instrumental.
Oh, you can't stop me, I'm gonna lose control.
Right, totally fine. So don't get so wrapped up missing the forest for the trees, so to speak here. When it comes to soloing in on things, I think that's really important there. Always kind of step back, look at things in context. And so that's my process. I go through the whole track like that. I did the verses first because it was easier. And then I'm going to go through the choruses here, normalize the vocals, make sure the tuning's on. I think I did tune all the main parts, normalize them, edit the backgrounds. A lot of the backgrounds are repeated. I copy paste. So I do it once, and then once I'm done with that, I can kind of copy paste it to the rest of the sections. The lead, however, I always track a different part for each chorus. So I never copy and paste the lead vocals because you don't want it to sound so like it was copy and pasted, so the same as the other sections. I like to add a little variety in there. So I make sure to do that as well. And then my last sort of step here is if I want to bounce anything down, I don't want to deal with all these tracks in a mix, I will do that. So I had about 15 tracks of these backgrounds that I did. They sound like this. They fit in the background like this in the chorus.
What is this world coming to?
So they fit really nicely. I processed it a certain way on recording day, and I like how it sounded. It had the right reverb, it had the right vibe, the right stacks. And I went, you know what? I'm not going to mix this better. I'm just going to go ahead and render it. So if you have sections like that, for example, this is my Easy Drummer 3 kit. Yes, theoretically, I could have bounced it all down to individual tracks, rendered them all out, but I'm like, the stereo stem sounds fine. No need for me to go through and do that. Let's just bounce it down. So I try to bounce down as many things as possible. Like if you look at my plugins here, I have nothing on the track. I have some stuff on the vocals because that's how I recorded it, and I just wanted to monitor through that as I'm making decisions. I'm probably going to take all that off when it comes to mixing day, except for tuning, of course, to kind of remix it and get it to sound perfect. But when I'm editing vocals, I want to have a feel that like this is kind of close to a final vocal sound. So I would go ahead and do that, render, bounce anything down that you like how it sounds already. Vocals, I'm not going to do that. All the individual parts, I'm not going to do that. And that's kind of my step for editing. And now basically when I'm done, I still have a little more vocal editing to do down there. Basically when I'm done editing these, the track is ready to be mixed and there's no plugins on anything. I can just kind of pull up the faders and start mixing. I don't have to worry about, oh my gosh, this vocal's out of tune, let's fix that. Or what's with this guitar part, you know, being completely out of time. You don't want to think about those things while you're mixing. Honestly, you want to work quickly, work in your process, which I'll explain when I get to the next video, which will be mixing. We're getting close to the end of this challenge here. You want to be in that mixing stage and you don't want to think about editing. So don't skip this step. Don't skip this editing step. Go ahead, start doing that on your tracks. Let me know how it's coming along. What was some of your biggest challenges there? And then we're going to wrap it up with mixing, mastering, artwork, and final release. So this has been a fun video series to do. I'll see you in that next video mixing series where we go over my mix of the song. So anyways, like and subscribe to the channel to keep up with this video series. And anyways, I'll see you guys next time.